All right, everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into one of the most fascinating, complex political machines on the planet, the structural flow of India's democracy. You hear the word federalism thrown around all the time, right? But how does it actually work in a country of over 1 billion people? How on earth is power divided without the whole thing just falling apart? Well, today we are dissecting the anatomy of the Indian government. We're going to break down the rules, the glaring exceptions, and the real-world friction. Honestly, by the end of this, you're going to look at political headlines in a completely new light. So let me throw a quick question at you right off the bat to challenge how we normally think about countries. Can American states, say Texas or California, legally decide to just leave the United States? And on the flip side, can an Indian state like Maharashtra or Tamil Nadu leave the Indian Union? Structurally speaking, the answer to the first one is yes. But the answer to the second? It's an absolute, undeniable no. And understanding exactly why that is the skeleton key to understanding the entire Indian system. Okay, here's our game plan for today. We'll start with the basics of federalism, dig into India's quasi-federal structure, and then look at the strong central government. After that, we'll trace the evolution of center-state relations, examine federal conflicts, and wrap up with the local government hierarchy. Let's jump right into part one, the basics of federalism. Think of federalism in two distinct flavors. First, you've got the coming together model, like the US. Independent states basically signed an agreement. They can theoretically break away, and citizens actually hold dual citizenship. But India is fundamentally different. It operates on a holding together model. The idea of the union existed first. That means states absolutely cannot secede, and there is strictly a single national citizenship. You are literally held together by the central structure. And, power sharing isn't just a top-down vertical thing either. It's also shared horizontally between the legislature, judiciary, and executive branches to keep everyone in check. But beyond the official government, power gets distributed across social groups, giving a crucial voice to religious and linguistic minorities. Plus, it's heavily influenced by organized pressure groups. Think farmers' organizations or the Confederation of Indian Industry, who exert very real structured pressure on how power is wielded every single day.
Moving on to Section 2, India's quasi-federal structure.
Okay, get this. The actual word federalism, it is literally nowhere to be found in the Indian constitution. Crazy, right? Instead, India is what we call quasi-federal. Structurally, sure, it looks like a federation with a center and states, but it possesses these remarkably strong unitary features. The central government holds a completely disproportionate amount of weight. It is definitely not a perfectly balanced scale. There's this famous quote that captures this dynamic perfectly. India is an indestructible union of destructible states. Just let that sink in for a second. While the Union of India cannot be broken, the central government has this staggering constitutional power to change the boundary of a state, change its area, change its name, or, get this, completely destroy an entire state and merge it with another. And they can pull this off with just a simple legislative majority. Now, politically, doing that against a state's will would be an absolute nightmare, but constitutionally, the power rests entirely with the center. Which brings us nicely to Section 3, the strong central government. Let's unpack the actual toolbox that gives the central government this definitive upper hand. First up, emergencies. During any national, state, or financial emergency, the center assumes massive control, basically overriding the federal structure altogether. Then you have finances. The center ultimately controls the bulk of the financial grants given to the states. You also have the governor of each state, who actually reports directly back to the center on how the state is performing. Furthermore, any residuary powers, meaning any new subjects not explicitly listed in the Constitution, automatically fall to the center. And finally, the All India services. The top administrative and police officers are recruited and trained centrally, even though they're deployed to work under state governments. So the central DNA is deeply woven into the state's administration. Now, normally, states stay in their lane and make their own laws on subjects assigned to them, but under extraordinary circumstances, the center can legally step right in and pass laws on state subjects. If there's an emergency, a foreign treaty, if the upper house passes a resolution, or even if 2 or more states simply request it, the central government can completely override normal legislative boundaries. And here's a detail that often flies under the radar. To maintain strict discipline and order within this highly centralized framework, Articles 33 and 34 actually limit the fundamental rights of people in the armed forces and government services. So, while a private citizen has broad freedom of speech, a government servant has severe limitations. They can be legally restricted from publicly criticizing the government or even engaging with certain political content on social media. All right, Section 4, the evolution of center-state relations. To really grasp how this plays out in the real world, you have to look at the timeline. It's almost like watching a pendulum swing. From 1947 through the 60s, a single party dominated both the center and most states, so conflicts were largely handled internally. But then the 60s saw the rise of regional parties, which really ramped up the friction. Fast forward to the coalition era from 1990 to 2014, and the bargaining power of the states drastically increased, with regional parties acting as literal kingmakers. From 2014 to 2024, power shifted back up with a return to single-party dominance at the center, before coalition dynamics returned yet again in 2024. The whole shape of the system literally bends depending on who holds the majority at the center. Next up, Section 5, Federal Conflicts and Demands. Look, whenever you have a system oscillating between central dominance and regional assertion, you are bound to get sparks. Finances are a huge point of friction. Southern states frequently argue they contribute way more in taxes than they ever receive back in central grants. You also have fierce demands for linguistic preservation, pushes for entirely new states based on socioeconomic needs, and states literally fighting each other over physical borders and vital resources like river water. To put this into perspective, just look at history. The Kaveri River dispute between Karnataka and Tamil Nadu has been this deeply contentious, decades-long battle over water sharing that's required major central and judicial intervention. And on the cultural front, the anti-Hindi protests in states like Tamil Nadu and Maharashtra highlight the intense pushback from states against any perception, real or imagined, that a single language or culture is being imposed on them from the top down. So how does the Constitution handle these deep inequalities and regional demands? Well, you have tools like Article 371, which provides tailored, special provisions to help develop specific states, like Andhra Pradesh or Sikkim, that face really unique historical or geographic challenges. However, the major financial tool known as Special Category Status, which used to provide extra funding, was notably discontinued, starting with the 14th Finance Commission. That was a massive shift in how the center financially accommodates these regions. Finally, Section 6, Local Government Hierarchy. We gotta zoom all the way down to the grassroots level here. Federalism in India goes one crucial level deeper than just the center and the states. Thanks to constitutional amendments back in 1993, administration reaches right into local neighborhoods. In urban areas, depending on the population size, you have municipal corporations, municipalities, or military cantonment boards. In rural areas, a state is broken down into districts managed by a district panchayat, then sub-districts or blocks managed by an intermediate panchayat, all the way down to the individual village panchayat. It's a highly structured ladder reaching right down to you, the local citizen. And that pretty much wraps up our explainer for today. But before you go, I want to leave you with a quick piece of homework that perfectly captures the chaotic, fascinating reality of Indian federalism. Remember that coalition era we talked about? Do me a favor and go look up a list of who the prime ministers of India were between the years 1991 and 1999. The sheer number of times the government changed hands in that tiny window will give you a stunning picture of exactly what happens when regional states hold the keys to the central kingdom. Seriously, look it up. You are in for a surprise. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep digging into the facts, and I'll see you next time.